Hi, this is Neil Clements, and this is The Real Deal with Neil. Today we're going to be talking about a painful subject, the mistake that cost me $50,000 in real estate. That would be my first flip. And we're going to talk about everything that led up to it, the mistakes that I made, some of the things I did right, which were very few things, and how that flip changed the rest of my life and who I am and made me who I am today. So let's get into it. So my first flip, this property came about in 2019. I found in my life that over the course of me reading books, I tend to study things several months or several years in advance before I'm actually implementing. So it was, say, 2018 Christmas or 2017 Christmas, and what I had asked for, for my family was some books on real estate investing and how to flip houses, because that's what I wanted to get into. I was studying, never really maybe thought that I would actually be doing that, but funny thing is now I built a career doing it. And so I had been studying. I started looking for opportunities, and all of a sudden in late 2019, I found myself sitting in front of a home seller, who's a real estate agent, and talking to her about listing her property. And what we came to realize is that maybe listing the property wasn't the best thing for her. And so I gave her a few different options. We could go on market for this price. I could buy it for this price. We have some investors also that might pay this price. Long story short, of the course of talking for the next few weeks, she decided to accept my offer. Very nerve-wracking, but also very exciting. And the question is why would anybody sell to an investor? Because the offer was quite a bit lower, tens of thousands lower, versus what they could get on market. And the answer, why does anybody do anything? Well, we've got to realize that the sellers that we work with, whether you're a real estate agent, an investor, like whatever you're doing, sellers just simply want to accomplish their main objective. Now, as a real estate agent, maybe we think that that's always getting the most for their house, or even as an investor, oh yeah, they want the most for their house. But the reality is that was not the situation here. And in fact, that's not the situation a lot of times. And so we have to ask ourselves why. Well, the answer is distress. And so why do people get distressed? Well, it could be finances, such as foreclosure, forbearance, short sale, tax, high interest loans. Could be property, such as structural damage, mold, failed renovations, water damage, you name it. It could be the owner for some reason, 3Ds, divorce, death, drugs. Could be an inherited property that they don't want anymore. Maybe they're relocating, maybe they're a failed landlord. And the truth is that this situation was a mixture of all of those, financial, property, and ownership. It was a little bit of a mess, but I was okay sorting it out because I knew that there was a big profit at the end, or so I thought. But as soon as I got it under contract, I started freaking out a little. And the reason I started freaking out is because while I was a very good real estate agent, I knew the values, I didn't have the money. I didn't have enough for the down payment. I didn't have enough for the rehab. I didn't have enough for the holding costs. I didn't have a lender lined up who would give me the money to do it. I didn't have a contractor. I didn't have any kind of experience flipping houses. I had done very minimal renovation work in the past. And in fact, as I look back, I didn't have pretty much everything or almost everything that I needed to flip that house. But what I did have, which I think was the true value, is I knew that I had a great deal and I had the determination to see it through. And sometimes that's all you need. And so what I told myself is, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And so I knew that my first problem that had to be addressed, because I knew the deal was good, right? That was the first thing. Is the deal good enough for me to put all this effort into? The answer was yes. Check that box. Second box, where am I going to get the money? And so I went head over heels. I had a 60-day closing, but I also had a 60-day option period. I was risking $100 at the end of the day, whether or not I could do this. And so the question was to myself, for 50 grand potential profit, am I willing to risk $100? And if you're listening to this and you're saying no to that, you're crazy. You would do the exact same thing that I did. There's no doubt in my mind that everybody would do what I did as long as the situations were correct. So I told myself, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And so what I did is I talked to 10 different people to try to fund the deal. I realized that I needed, in addition to a lender, I also needed somebody to place my down payment, to pay for my rehab, and to do all of that. So I went from everybody to past bosses. I went to friends and family. I went to relatives. Gosh, I talked to everybody that I could think of who I thought had money and liked real estate. Got a lot of no's throughout the process. I even had to call and talk to over 50 different banks. I just basically Googled banks and tried to figure out who's going to do it. I will tell you that I learned really quick what banks like investment real estate, like flips, and what don't. And if you want a video on that, let me know. But long story short, you're not going to Chase, Wells Fargo, or Bank of America to do those kind of loans. Let's just say that. I even brought out several different contractors to come and give us bids, and more on that later. That was one of the things that I messed up on in big time. And I truly, though, I felt like at that time I had done the work necessary to mitigate the risk that I was taking on. I had never taken on, it was, a $200,000 purchase at the time. This was 2019. That was a considerable sum of money for me. And I had never taken that risk. It was far above my net worth at that time. But what came out of this is that a philosophy that I have now, I found the bank who was willing to lend me 80% of the deal. I found an investor who was going to partner alongside me, who had general contracting experience and who had money to place my down payment and also to do the renovations for me. And then I was going to sell the property at the end. And I had bids. I had multiple bids, ranges that I thought were reasonable for the work. And what I realized is that if the deal is good enough, the rest will fall into place. But let's get into the juice on this one. Where did I lose the money? The whole title of this video, the mistake that cost me 50 grand in real estate. Where did I lose the money? Well, a lot of different ways. Too many ways. And it came down mainly to contracting. So the contractors that came through, we got 3 different bids. Most of the bids came in at, say, 45 to 50,000, 2 of the bids. One bid came in at 30,000, and it was from another person that we thought we trusted at the time. So what did we do? We went with a 30,000, of course. And so they got started on the work. They got about halfway done, demoed everything, started laying floors, started painting, started really getting some substantial progress done. They claimed that, they needed another draw. We were at least smart enough to have a contract and to pay them based upon work completed and to kind of do it out on a draw basis. But we made the mistake, and my partner made the mistake of listening to a story where they needed 10,000, actually 15,000 extra. And he went ahead and gave it to them to go buy materials. And long story short, we never heard from that contractor again. So yeah, we lost $15,000 overnight. And so how did that happen? Well, it happened because the contractor baited us in with a really low quote. The price of the repairs was actually 40 to 50 grand, not 30. So they baited us in. They did just enough work for us to believe that they were upright and honest people. And then when they got halfway done, they came and asked for 15 more with the intention of never coming back. And what we should have done, that I now know, is that we should have held to our schedules. We should have bought the materials ourselves, delivered them to the site, or had Home Depot deliver them to the site, paid the contractor for the work after it was done. And then once we reviewed the work, wouldn't go ahead and pay them at that time. That way we never get behind. We're always ahead of the contractor. That would have saved us 15. The second thing that happened was that now we went with a 30,000 estimate, not the 50,000 estimate. Well, we underestimated our rehab costs. And because of some of the work that had been done and halfway done, it had to be started from scratch. So that was a $25,000 swing, because just because we lost the 15 and gave it away doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody else's labor is going to be cheaper. Their labor was what it cost, which was the actual price to do it. So then we had to pay somebody else $25,000 more than we anticipated and ran our numbers at. So now we're up to, what is that, almost 40 plus. And in addition to this, it took us some time to find the other contractors to get them on the schedule. They were a month behind. They were getting to the project. And we had some gaps in the time where we didn't even know that the guy had disappeared. And so it took us 6 months to get to market. You add that onto the fact that we bought it in December 2019, and the time when we were about ready to go to market was when COVID hit. March, April, May 2020. And so our value got adjusted down too. I mean, gosh, I cannot tell you how many stupid things we did on this project. The light at the end of the tunnel, and why this was life-changing for me though, is that at the end of the day, after all of those screw-ups, after all of those mistakes, we still made almost $10,000 net profit at the end of the day. And so for me, my takeaway from all of this was that if I buy at a price where it's impossible to lose money, then I won't lose money. And I say that because the only saving grace on all of this, the only reason that, gosh, I didn't go, say, bankrupt by losing $50,000 on my first flip, is because I knew deep down from my numbers, from being a realtor, from comping it well, I knew that the value was there. I was willing to take the risk, and I took it with somebody. And even though he made mistakes, even though I made mistakes, we still came out all right. And what this did, the reason it changed my life, is this gave me the confidence to go full force into house flipping at the time and then into land flipping. And truly, it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life. It helped me multiply my wealth in ways that I knew I would get to someday, but I never thought possible to do it so quickly. The other takeaway that I had from this was that all learning has a cost. And you can either go pay to learn from somebody else, or you can go and make your own mistakes and learn from them. And I'll tell you, this 50 grand that I lost from this deal is the best coaching that I've ever received in my life. Imagine if this loss with the same contractor would have come when a time when we had 5 or 10 simultaneous flips going and we lost $250,000 or $500,000, God forbid. Like, we just made these mistakes over and over again. So while I do not like the people who did this to me, they did a very, very valuable lesson for me up front by taking advantage of me very quickly. And because of that, I'm a much better business person, and my life has changed for the much better very quickly. And so the takeaway that I want you to have from all of this today, as I'm wrapping up, is the right deal changes everything. And another perspective I want you to have is that flipping, whether it's land, houses, even outside of real estate, if you're flipping things for value, it's only hard until you've done it. And it's only crazy until it's not, meaning that you've done it. And so, guys, I hope this helps. If y'all have any more tips for me on things that I should have done, I'm open to hearing it. But I'll tell you, since the time that happened, which has been 5 years, we generated probably tens of millions of revenue at this point from flips. We have not made the same mistakes again. And that flip and that loss is what truly catapulted my career into something special from just being kind of average at the time. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you can learn from my mistakes and that you can go out and know that you can accomplish great things. Thanks.